Okay, so this is now week 8. So we're talking about the work that we covered in week 7, and the work that we covered in week 7 was largely around this idea of technology-based industries and the management of innovation. So we're thinking about business strategy or corporate strategy in the context of technology now. And for those of you that remember the new venture development, you'll know that the diffusion of innovation, which is this idea that there are, innovators and early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. These are the consumers that are changing their behaviour as products become more acceptable. That actually that's a very normal process in all products and services. But specifically in the case of technology, that there is the chasm model, which is about the adoption of technology as opposed to the adoption of new ideas. And in that particular case, what happens is because technology changes so quickly and because people are cautious about investing in something which is potentially a very high risk, it doesn't necessarily have the infrastructure that goes with it. It's not compatible necessarily with all your existing devices. That some of the advantages that new technology brings, unfortunately, is outweighed by the disadvantages of switching between standards. And the consequence of which is there's no guarantee that new and better ideas will result in successful businesses. Okay, so that chasm is the bit where people have accepted in principle that it's a better product, but actually the challenges of introducing it are much greater than the benefits, perceived benefits of what that product will bring. Okay, so remember that chasm model because it's quite a useful one to understand why strategy in terms of innovation and technology has to be quite sophisticated because there are so many other things you have to do other than just come up with a low cost cost leadership product or one that is technically superior and therefore is highly differentiated or is specifically a niche product, because even if you have all those things, in most cases technology needs what we might call complementary resources, and that's what we'll talk about briefly in this session. Okay, so innovation is actually the end of a chain of research, development, rethinking problems, where to begin with typically we start with invention, and that is that new knowledge has come about, and that new knowledge helps us to think about a product or a service that we might be able to create in principle that solves a problem that we're aware of. Okay, now where that product or service in principle can then be successfully launched, then we have innovation. So innovation by definition is the concept of adding value or creating value through the delivery of new ideas and services. Okay, so then you've got innovation, people are buying your products, they're accepting your products, but of course then it has to diffuse through this the population of existing users. Now those existing users on the whole are happy with the product that they've got. So we have a few people who are innovators, they want to try something new or as a special solution your product produces that they can't get from somebody else. These maybe lead to the early adopters who can see that actually maybe this new product is better than the one they've got. And in the case of technology, we then have this chasm, which is there aren't enough people currently buying and using the product for your strategy to be successful, and you need to grow the number of users, and that's where you have to cross the chasm. And effectively this is about somehow making your product the standard product. So as a leader of a technology, you have the challenge of trying to break through existing standards. As a follower of a technology, you have the benefit that somebody else has already created the standards, and so what you can do is you can imitate those standards and cost effectively overtake those initial leaders. So where the leader is able to create the standards and defend the standards, then they normally maintain leadership, market leadership and sales. Where they are unable to maintain those standards or to defend those standards, then what happens, of course, is the imitator simply copies those standards, and as a consequence of not spending all that money on research and development, essentially overtake the leader. And that's really important because from a strategy point of view, you have a choice to be a leader and create the standards and then defend them, or you can be a follower, which is wait and see. I've got the capacity. we have the resources, we can copy very quickly, and therefore we can let somebody else take the risk, because the risk may result in their failure anyway, or they can take the risk and they start to grow, and then we can overtake them because we can copy them, imitate them, and do it for lower prices. So this is really what strategy at the sort of innovation end means, because the innovation itself does not guarantee you success, because someone can always copy you. So innovation which you can defend almost always guarantees you success. Yeah. As opposed to, if you have the resources, you could choose not to innovate, to wait, to allow somebody else to spend the time and take the risk, and consequently you could then use the resources you have to overtake your competition by saying, well, we can do the same thing at a lower price. Okay, and this is very typical of the things that have happened in terms of car technology, in terms of phone technology, in terms of almost every technology where an innovator has not been able to defend their position because they've used all their resources on developing the innovation in the first place. Okay, so who benefits from innovation? Well, it's really interesting that if you look at the research on this, customers almost always benefit from the innovation. They get better value, they get it at a better price, they get better quality, and therefore customers are the number one beneficiaries of innovation, particularly where there is competitive innovation taking place, and both companies are trying to, or numbers of companies are trying to improve the quality, reliability, performance of products. So the customers are the main beneficiary. But interestingly, the suppliers are also a key beneficiary too, because they now have customers who need their support, who need their resources, who need their capabilities. So the suppliers, so the industry, if you think about the industry structure, the suppliers and the buyers are two of the key beneficiaries. The third beneficiaries is anybody that can imitate the product. So these are like new entrants or substitutes. We can see something new that's coming along, we have the resources to copy it, so we will copy it. And therefore you might in fact become the market leader, even though you are a follower. And interestingly, the least benefit that's achieved when you think about who benefits are the innovators themselves. Because although they may in many cases become market leaders, the effort they put into developing new products and ideas is normally significant, and it takes many years to get that money back. Okay, so innovation is really important. It means customers gain value. If they gain value, then that normally means generating more profits. But actually those profits are shared between many people, and the innovating company is often the least beneficial because it can't always hold on to that. Okay, so if you come along with a successful new product that's better than anybody else's product, it must surely make sense that you are going to be the market leader. But actually the evidence is that that's not true. And we looked, for example, last week at the example of Michelin, who developed a run-flat tyre. So their strategy was to essentially persuade manufacturers of cars to put run-flat tyres on all their vehicles, and Honda did this, in fact. So Michelin had a really great success because all Honda's cars were going to be manufactured and supplied with run-flat tyres. Now that was great until the tyres were damaged. Okay, so they may run flat, but you still have to replace them when they're damaged. And then what happened was that the marketplace, which was about repairing tyres, didn't exist. And consequently, initially, Michelin were the world leaders and the market leaders, and were very successful because businesses were standardizing on the run-flat tyre. But unfortunately, the people who repair the tyres hadn't standardized because most of their business was coming from standard inflatable tyres, which could be repaired in the normal way. So as a consequence, what turned out to be the biggest market opportunity was ignored completely by Michelin, and the biggest market was 10 times bigger, as it happens, than the manufactured new car market. What essentially happened was they missed out on this massive opportunity because as part of that opportunity, they needed people who could distribute tyres to the average user who may previously have had a normal type of tyre, and people were not buying the run-flat tyres because they're more expensive and they were difficult to repair. They had the problem that they couldn't service because they were relying on the distributor to do the servicing, And the distributor wasn't interested because they weren't getting a good return on their investment, and because most of their customers use standard tyres. So you can see there are lots of reasons why, even if you've got the best product, your customer and your customer really likes it, but actually the practicalities are that your technology needs the support of many different people. Okay, and therefore that's why complementary technologies are important. So the relationship then you have throughout your supply chain becomes critical. And we've talked in previous weeks about this concept of vertical integration and horizontal integration. Now, if we happen to own all our suppliers and our buyers in terms of the distribution channel, then we have control over where they commit their resources, and we have control over making sure that our new innovations are properly supported. But if that's not the case, then we have to think about different types of partnerships we might have with the supply chain. So at one end of the scale, you could buy your supply chain so that you control, where your raw materials come from. You can control your own manufacturing operations, and you can control how those products are being distributed and serviced. And in that sort of case, that's essentially wholly owned. You own the whole chain. But at the other end of the scale, we have licensing. And licensing has been very successful. So Bluetooth is a great example of a product which is licensed. It's designed by Ericsson, which is a communications company, and what they've done is that they've licensed it so that every time Bluetooth technology is put in your phone, your tablet, your earbuds, whatever, then the manufacturers of those products have to pay Ericsson some money. This is fantastic, isn't it? Because it means you can get your product to billions of people through billions of different products without actually having to manufacture any of them yourself. So that very loose arrangement can give you massive access to the marketplace, but of course you have no control over the quality of the products that are released. So if your Bluetooth is not working, or it's unreliable, or it's intermittent, then you may assume that it's the Bluetooth technology that's at fault, when in reality it's actually the manufacturer of the earbuds or the phone piece or whatever. Yeah, so you do lose some of that control, whilst at the same time getting access to volume. So there's always this dynamic between who should be in charge, how much control do I have, and therefore what's the best choice in terms of a strategy for getting across the chasm, getting to the marketplace, creating a standard, but then being in control of that standard so that you can then benefit from the value that's generated. Okay, and that's the difficulty that we're talking about at this level. So you can lead, but if you don't defend, you get overtaken. You can follow, but if you can't outperform, then you remain a follower. Essentially, the rule is market leaders generate the highest prices, control the prices, and generate the highest profits. And competitive advantage is all about generating the highest and most sustainable profits over a period of time. Okay, so think about it in that way. All right, so being first doesn't always make you number one, but there are some companies who have achieved this. So Microsoft is a great example where the Windows package has become the dominant package in the marketplace, and therefore no one even questions doing anything else. And because they don't question doing anything else, Microsoft can control the price. Other companies, Bosch, for example, were the designers of anti-lock braking systems, and because anti-lock braking systems have been so helpful in helping people's lives and saving people's lives, what they've managed to do is they've become the standard for those systems. And when competitors come along with something that's alternative, generally speaking, particularly when it relates to safety, consumers are not that impressed. They want the best because it's about saving their lives. So being first, doing something well, and having a strategy that gets you into the marketplace, supported by all the complementary resources, is really what we're focusing on for a business or corporate strategy. So the obvious question then, and we'll be dealing with that this week, is as the corporation or as the company that actually develops the technology in the first place or the new service, how can we work with our sister companies, our parent companies, or our children, effectively, our subsidiaries, so that they maximize the benefits that our products and service delivers? Do we have a relationship with our subsidiaries so that our subsidiaries are actually doing what we want them to do, and delivering the best possible value to their customers, as opposed to they're doing what they're good at, which might be something quite different. So that's what we'll talk about next week. This is the week of your case study submission. Good luck with that. I look forward to working with you again this week, more multiple choice questions. And we're starting to work on exam questions as well now. So come along, have some fun, and see you in the classroom. Okay?